Thank you for joining us on Ken's 5 Plus. I'm Deborah Knapp, and our election coverage continues. Polls closed just 30 minutes ago, and now you are determining who wins and who loses tonight. We have a team of reporters tracking local and state races along with the team. And we have two special guests helping us break down the results and add context to the numbers tonight. Joining me now are Laura Barberena, a Democratic communications consultant. Thank you for being here. And Diane Rapp, Secretary of the Republican Party of Bexar County and a longtime Republican volunteer. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Well, the big race everybody's watching, of course, the presidential race for the White House. And we've got the latest numbers coming in here across Texas. These are very early numbers, but let's take a look at those. 51% right now for Donald Trump, 47% for Kamala Harris. Now, of course, there's no suspense as to what's going to happen in Texas. We're going to be voting for the Republican, but the margins have been shrinking over the last 3 elections. I mean, let me start with you, Laura. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, I think there's a little bit of maybe Trump fatigue, right, where we're seeing him become a little bit more on the edge. That's a nice way of putting what I really want to say. But I think, some of these outlandish things that we've seen him, the erratic behavior. So I think there's some Donald Trump fatigue. But then you're also seeing a demographic change, right? You're seeing more Latinos being a part of the voting electorate. You're seeing more participation on their part. So, they say that demography is destiny. I think that's the saying. Demography is destiny. So you're seeing more Latinos participating, and that could ultimately change the outcome. We always say that once Texas turns blue, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, those don't matter anymore, right? Once Texas turns blue, but we're still probably a few cycles away from that happening.
Well, I know, Diane, Republicans have been making a very hard push for Latino votes and have been successful in that. But what do you attribute this shrinking margin to?
I think what you're really seeing is, as you said, the demographic change. Steve Murdoch, the state demographer, forecasted 30 years ago that by 2030, we would be a Hispanic majority and a much younger state. We're one of the youngest states in the country, and usually your younger voters will be more liberal in their voting patterns. So I think that contributes a lot to it. It's interesting because people talk about all the folks moving to Texas from California, but most of the analysis shows that's not really having a significant impact at this time. And I think it's really more a function of demographics, because most people feel that Trump is just saying what people are thinking and are too embarrassed to say out loud. I think the vote's going to show that in Texas, that he really does represent the people. And I think nationally, you're going to see that same forecast coming true. He says what people are thinking and don't want to say themselves.
That's a little terrifying on my part, being a Latina, because if he's saying what everyone is thinking, then I'm a little scared. Like, that's not the America that I want to grow up in.
But it has nothing to do with Latinas. I mean, I have a Hispanic grandson, so I think it is very much a melting pot in Texas, and Texas really does represent the future of the country.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I was just picking up on when you said what he says is what he's saying the dirty part out loud. That's what worries me, right? Because I do think he's saying some things that are very offensive, and calling politicians like Nancy Pelosi, I mean, he just comes short of calling her the B word, and I mean, he basically refers to it as the B word. And I mean, I just think that's inappropriate in our national politics. I'd like there to be more a civil discourse. Like, let's argue on the policies and not, calling each other names, because I really think that takes away from what I think voters want to hear.
I couldn't agree more, because I think my biggest disappointment is that this has been an election based on personalities and not policies, and people have really voted on promises and not facts and records, because the divisiveness certainly was not one way. When you have the horror stories and the threats that have come out of Kamala Harris, with the Nazi, the end of democracy, end of the country. So both sides clearly, I think, have an opportunity to bring unity and bring people together and moderate the tones, because whoever is elected is going to represent all of us. And clearly the horrible discourse that we have heard from the Democrats with the name calling, even 2 assassination attempts, are very significant. Everyone should take note of that also.
Well, excuse me.